One of the things that always struck me about you, John, as the chairman of the board, so to speak, of Cabinet, was your extraordinary commitment to being on time, for example, and not inconveniencing people, and if you couldn't do something, you'd apologise in advance. That's not what all Prime Ministers have done through the
Well,
years.
I would never comment about other Prime Ministers as not knowing all their circumstances, but I did take the view that you owed people, if you were the chairman, you owed people the courtesy of punctuality, and it had an upside for the team though. It did provide a bit of gentle discipline, and if people were late, well, they were conscious of it. I always tried to arrive at Cabinet meetings 5 minutes before they were due to start, and I also tried not to call Cabinet meetings with unnecessarily brief notice, because it interrupts us. It's all part of the courtesy, respect thing, and you should never, if you have authority, you should be respected for it by virtue of how you use it, not because you've got it. And this applies outside politics. The greatest military commanders in history were ones that cared more about their troops than many others who held equal rank. I mean, one of the great things that was said about Sir John Monash, undoubtedly the greatest military figure our country's produced, was his care for his soldiers. And in all the books I've read about military leadership, the ones that really were able to instill the right level of discipline were the ones who understood that they had to care for their troops, they had to think of them, they obviously call upon them to risk their lives various stages, but they understood that they had an obligation to look after them and not bring them into an impossibly against the odds situation.
Yeah, I remember taking a group of school leaders through the Parliament House, and then we met over at Defence Headquarters with Angus Houston, Chief of Defence Force at that time. And he made that very point. He said, if you want men to make, and women on the battlefield or whatever, to make enormous sacrifices, they have to know you care about them.
Yeah, a little thing, I was reading something about Monash some months ago, and how he had his troops in ready for a battle, and it took a bit longer than he'd originally planned before he sort of blew the whistle on the assault, and he gave an order that they all be fed a hot meal, and then because of the delay he said, well, I'm going to give them another hot meal. Now it sounds a simple thing, but it was a sort of demonstration of concern that he was famous for.
I don't know whether you were even aware that people used to talk about it, but they used to say with great appreciation, the people with families, that you'd set a high standard because you once cut a high-level meeting short so as to be at one of your son's sporting events.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
That was quite deeply appreciated, I have to say.
Well, it's very important, and we keep hearing, understandable exhortations from people in public life that fathers should play an even greater role in the upbringing of their children. Men should play. Well, you've got to allow for that. You've got to walk the walk as well as talk the talk on that sort of subject. And I felt it was one of the things that I could do, was to allow space for that sort of thing to happen. And as you may remember, I tried very hard not to have cabinet meetings in weekends, or very, very rarely, because you don't need to do that if you're well organised. You really don't. I mean, if there's a crisis, if the country gets invaded or there's a natural disaster, but that doesn't happen very often.